What's up, everyone? This is Lucas Ross Sports, and you're watching my Lucas Ross Sports channel, and it's time for week number 7 of Upset Alert, and for the 2022 college football season. Week number 6 last week, looking back to that, we had some big-time upsets that happened. You had Kentucky losing to South Carolina. That game did not turn out to be, an upset alert type game, but it turned out to be an upset alert type game. And, Kentucky was favored going into that game. Alabama was a big favorite over Texas A&M. I think the absence of Bryce Young, got to them a little bit. But there are some huge games this weekend coming up, in the conference play. We're starting to see what these teams are looking like. And also, the playoff rankings are going to be coming out soon. And, it's just about over in October. We're starting to see October, be a wide open month. And we're going to be heading into the November. Maybe things will slow down by that time, but let's get right into it here with this upset alert for week number 7. And how this video works, I will give you 8 games total. I will give you 4 games that are most not likely to be an upset, and then games that are most likely to be an upset. We'll start with the games that are most not likely to be an upset, and we'll start with this one. It's in the SEC. It's Auburn at Ole Miss. Ole Miss coming off 2 great wins against Kentucky and Vanderbilt. The Vanderbilt game was much better for Ole Miss. They only won that Kentucky game by 3. This game's at noon Eastern time on ESPN. Ole Miss favored by 14.5 points. And, I could see that, being an agreement there. Auburn hasn't been that really good this year. They're pretty much, not really terrible, but, they just haven't been a quality team, like I was saying, But this game right here is not really considered to be an upset alert type game. I think Ole Miss will go in here with a lot of confidence and, stay unbeaten. And remember, Ole Miss has to still play Alabama on the schedule. We're going to talk about Alabama in just a minute, but once again, this game is at noon Eastern time on ESPN. That's our first most not likely to be an upset alert type game. Let's go to the second game, and it's in the Big 12. It's Iowa State and Texas. Texas ranked number 22 in the AP poll this past week. And, you got to wonder, actually Texas is ranked number 23. I should put them at number 23. This game's at noon Eastern time on ABC. Home game for Texas. They're favored by 16.5 points. And the over-and-under is at 49.5. So they're calling this one a defensive game here. I could see it being a defensive game for some reason because both of these teams are pretty even on the defensive side of the ball. Texas, I think, is just much better on the offensive side of the ball. And look at Texas. They're a dark horse contender in the Big 12 conference. TCU and Oklahoma State are pretty much at the top of the Big 12. But Texas could make a big run at it. They could still win the Big 12 and maybe perhaps go to the Big 12 championship, maybe finish in that top 2 spot. But once again, this game is at noon Eastern time. Iowa State, on the other hand, their schedule is pretty tough, but you got a chance to maybe knock off Texas in this game because we know how teams, lose the next week after a big-time win, and then they lose the next week. So let's see what Texas does here this weekend. Let's go to the third game now. And we don't really study these teams. It's James Madison and Georgia Southern. There weren't a lot of games that are most likely to be most not likely to be an upset alert type games on here. I had to go with this one. James Madison, though, they're ranked in the top 25. They're playing Georgia Southern here. This game's at 4 o'clock on October 15th. This game's on ESPN Plus. It's not a big game. James Madison, though, they're favored by 11.5 points, and the over and under is at 67. They're favoring them by a touchdown. James Madison's undefeated at 5-0. Georgia Southern. Remember, they beat Nebraska in the early part of the season. That was the big-time upset. Maybe Georgia Southern pulls off a big upset here. You never know what can happen, with these upset alert type games. But this is on the most not likely to be an upset, which I'm really surprised it's not most likely to be an upset. You had Georgia Southern beat Nebraska early in the year. And, their record is really promising. It's not just about the overall record. It's just about how the teams have played. Georgia Southern, though, I think they're, capable of, pulling off an upset here. But this one, once again, James Madison is a favorite by 11.5. And remember, how I do these videos, I just choose the top 25 teams. I don't do the unranked teams. I just do top 25 teams in my upset alert videos. All right, let's go to the last game now. And this one was a tough one for me, but I had to go with this one in the SEC. It's Vanderbilt and Georgia. Georgia ranked number 1 in the AP poll once again. This game's at 3:30 on the SEC network. Georgia favored by 38 points in this game, and the over and under is at 58.5. So I'm not really surprised that Georgia is a big favorite here. They played better in their last game against Auburn last week, and they're sitting there, with a good resume after, the first couple of games the last 2 games they played, against Kent State and Missouri. They both had really tough matchups in those 2 games, but I think this Georgia offense and this defense will start to get better as the season goes on. And I think that was the real competition that Georgia had. Maybe they didn't really study the game a lot. I think they were just focused on Auburn, in the next few weeks. But Georgia, though, ever since that game against Oregon, they've still been completely dominant on the offensive side of the ball. And they will be dominant in this game against Vanderbilt. I don't really see Vanderbilt competing in this game. I really see Georgia blowing them out. If they don't blow them out, that's just going to be crazy. But Georgia will win this game pretty easily. Not an upset alert type game. Let's go to the games now that are most likely to be an upset. And it's this first one. It's Penn State and Michigan, a top 10 matchup here. This game at noon Eastern time on Fox. Michigan favored by about a touchdown. The over and under is at 52. So Michigan and Penn State, this is pretty much, who decides who is the second best team in the Big Ten East. You look at Michigan, their offense has been explosive. You look at Penn State, we did not expect them to be undefeated, going into week number 7. I mean, Penn State coming out of a, bye week, I think they have an opportunity to really knock off Michigan on the road. But it's a home game for Michigan. That's the good news. I mean, I thought this game would probably go to College Game Day. I thought it was one of those categories, but we'll talk about College Game Day in just a minute. Michigan, though, their offense was pretty explosive in the first 3 games, but ever since they played some Big Ten competition, the offense has kind of taken a step back a little bit. The offense, though, is still really good enough to really win some big-time games. Coming off that big win against Indiana this past weekend. Penn State, though, they're coming out of a bye week. Do they have what it takes to really pull off an upset? I think they do, but I'm going to favor Michigan in this one. If I was going to make a prediction on this game, I would choose Michigan to win this one. I did choose Michigan to win in the preseason if you just saw my predictions back then, and I think Michigan will pull off a win here. Let's go to the second game now, and it's in the Big 12. This one is perhaps the biggest game in the Big 12 this season. Oklahoma State and TCU. This game's at 3:30 Eastern Time on ABC. TCU favored by 3.5 points, and the over and under is at 68.5. So TCU about favored by a field goal in this game, maybe about 4 points as well. And Oklahoma State, they are 5-0 heading into this game. TCU coming off some big couple wins, against Kansas last weekend, and then the blowout win over Oklahoma. You look at Oklahoma State, what they have done this year. I mean, the secondary has looked much better. That was obviously a big concern coming into this season for Oklahoma State. But TCU, they've been proven, this really decides who is the best team in the Big 12. Is it Oklahoma State or TCU? But we never know. I mean, both of these teams could slip up at the end of the season, but TCU and Oklahoma State, this just decides who is the Big 12, top team. Who is the top team in the Big 12 conference. If I was going to make a prediction on this game, I would choose TCU to go with the upset. I mean, I think TCU has enough, depth to really hang in there with this Oklahoma State team, and I think TCU will win this game. So I'm going to pick TCU to win that game. Let's go to the third game now, and it's in the ACC. It's Clemson and Florida State. Now, I had a hard time. There were a lot of great games to choose from in these upset alert, video. I mean, you have NC State playing Syracuse this Saturday. That's going to be a big-time top 25 showdown. But I had to go with this game. Clemson and Florida State. Clemson, their offense has been pretty good in the last 2 weeks. How will they do on the road, though, against Florida State? Florida State, though, they've turned things around a little bit. But they've lost 2 straight games now. They have to turn it around a little bit. If they could pull off a big upset here, it would be really good for Mike Norvell and the Florida State Seminoles. 7:30 game here. It's a night game on ABC. And Clemson is favored by 3.5 points in this game. I mean, I'm not really surprised that they only favor them by 3.5 because Florida State is an underdog. Florida State is a pretty big underdog in this game, but I'm calling this one a 50-50 game. But I still think Clemson will survive this game somehow and give Florida State their third loss of the season. I think Clemson will remain undefeated, and they are a playoff contender. They are legitimately a playoff contender. All right, let's go to the last game now. This is pretty much the biggest game of the weekend, and it's in the SEC. It's Alabama and Tennessee, the third Saturday in October matchup here. 3:30 game here, CBS. Alabama favored by 7.5, and the over and under is at 65. So they're pretty much favoring Alabama by about a touchdown, which I'm really surprised it's not a field goal favorite. Alabama, though, that game against Texas A&M last week, they were without Bryce Young. If Bryce Young is healthy this weekend, Alabama is pretty much going to roll on Tennessee, but it will still be a close game. But, Bryce Young put up some big numbers last year against this Tennessee team. And then for Tennessee, Hendon Hooker has been pretty consistent with his passing. Hasn't thrown an interception yet. Tennessee is coming in at 5-0. They're coming off some big couple wins, against Florida in the SEC and also LSU in the SEC last week. I still did not expect Tennessee, to blow out LSU last week. So they're playing a back-to-back Western opponent here. Even if Tennessee loses this game, they can still win the East. They have to just beat Georgia to win the East. But they still got a tough, couple games on their schedule that are tough. Kentucky coming up. And, Alabama's still got to play Ole Miss, on the road. But if Alabama survives this game, if Bryce Young plays, I think Alabama will win. But if he doesn't play, Tennessee will win. Tennessee, has injuries as well. They got some players suspended, and also they got, Cedric Tillman is still questionable if he'll even play. But Alabama's got a lot of key injuries as well at the wide receiver position. This game, though, is going to be big. It's college game day as well here, and it might be one of the biggest atmospheres coming up this weekend in the 2022 college football season. Those are my upset alert games for week number 7 of the 2022 college football season. Let me guys know what you think down in the comments below, what games I should have added here. And stay tuned here for more on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.